First, a moment to just explain that what you did not see, which was happening during the break, which was the speakers from the first session were receiving envelopes. You probably saw me running around giving envelopes to people. And I want to assure you that I was not giving them bribes or payouts or kickbacks or anything like that. These were the official gifts thanking the speakers from the Union of the Baltic Cities, and they are relief packages from UNICEF. And I thought I would translate for you, because it's only in Swedish, what those packets are about. Millions of children and their families are forced to flee from conflict and disaster all over the world. To have help with the most basic things like water and food can be a matter of life or death for small children. And it has to happen quickly. So the packets that are essentially being received by our speakers and then given, and then actually going to the children, include a warm blanket, 400 tablets for cleaning water, which can clean up to 2,000 liters at a time, those tablets, 25 bags of to replace fluids if you have diarrhea and that sort of thing, and then 30 bags of nourishment cream from nuts and that. So I think it's one of the most wonderful gifts that I've seen come out of an organization to speakers. So I wanted you to know what's happening when you see those envelopes. Also, there's been a telephone lost by a man at this conference. I know it was lost by a man because it was at the men's toilet that it was found. So if you went off to the facilities and left your telephone, it has been turned into reception at the conference, and you can find it there. And if you know somebody who, if they're not in the room and you find out about it, please spread that word. Very good. Now, to get our session started this afternoon, we have a short cultural surprise.
graten nå. Denne elva skal gi deg vann. Denne jenta skal føde ditt barn, 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 denne jenta skal føde ditt barn. Sakte dansen tro. Denne jorda skal i din grav. Sakte dansen tro. Danse, ikke gråte nå. Denne jorda skal bli din grav. Denne jorda skal bli din grav. Sakte dansen tro. Danse, ikke gråte nå. Denne jorda skal bli din grav.
Well, as I'm sure you could guess, those were also students from St. Siegfried's, and now you know why they have an extraordinary reputation at that school. Well, we are about to start our second session, which actually has two parts. We have a lot of topics to discuss: European policy, economic drivers of innovation, tackling pressing social concerns, the environment and resources. Essentially, the whole city and sustainable development agenda is on the table for us this afternoon, and we'll cover it all in 2 hours. We'll have two brisk panel discussions, and this time the emphasis is really on trying to engage more conversation. So some of our presenters will make formal presentations, others will simply join the discussion, and some will have a small interview with me here on stage. But to get us started, we're very fortunate to have with us, and I'm going to say what his title is before I give you his name. He's the coordinator for the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region. And for all of us who work on Baltic Sea issues, we know that this means he's doing a very critical job related to how Europe and the Baltic Sea are working together. His name is Peter Schenk. And Peter has been doing that job since 2014, but he's had many other jobs in the Commission between 1999 and 2014. He's very experienced. And he's coming with a background in economics and European studies. And Peter, I'm very much looking forward to your presentation, which will kick us off and give us, I think, a very well-rounded understanding of what the EUSBSR. Do you notice how fast I could say that? EUSBSR. I had to practice for a year to get that down. What it's doing, what's happening, and what it means for us here in the Baltic Sea region. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Alan. Do you all understand me? think so. Let me first, it's always good to start after the coffee break, because then you're still all awake. That's a privilege. Thank you for your kind words, Alan. Before starting, may I ask you, after how many minutes will you turn off the microphone and drag me off the stage?
No, we started late, but you can take the time you planned.
Okay, thank you very much. So, so dear organizers, dear participants, pleased to be here and to address you, the local level cities in the Baltic Sea region. I'm quite impressed by the attendance today. It's quite a high number of participants who are taking part in this. I would like to give you a short overview on where we are on EU cooperation instruments in the region, starting with Interreg, which is in a way the older brother or sister, let's say, of the UBC or the CBSS. We have celebrated the 25th anniversary 2 years ago, and for the cooperation instruments for the Interreg, especially for the cross-border programs, I know, let's say, from my work with cross-border programs, that cities are very important in implementing in terms of projects, but also in many programs also being part of the programming, of setting priorities, of the decision-making process and the monitoring committees. So I would like to start with the Interreg programs, the situation, and then go to the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region, and then also say a few words on quite recent initiatives in the Commission on tackling border obstacles, which is not directly related to funding, but which is nevertheless important, I think, also for cities, in particular if you are located in a border region. So let's start with the big picture, with the overall picture, ETC, to recapitulate what is available. We have, for cohesion policy during this programming period, 2014-2020, we have around roughly 350 billion euros available for the whole of Europe for the 7-year period for the 2 objectives, growth and jobs and cooperation. And if we look at the Interreg, it falls under the cooperation objective, and it accounts for less than 3% of the budget, of the total budget, which is still a significant amount, a bit more than 10 billion for the whole of Europe. And this is then translated into cooperation programs, into 60 cross-border programs, 11 of which in the Baltic Sea region, into transnational programs, interregional programs, and then we also have the cross-border programs with the countries preparing for pre-accession and the neighborhood countries as well. And not forget the interregional cooperation, URBAC, one of them, which is dealing with urban matters, included. So how would this translate in the Baltic Sea region? Here we have, on the left-hand side, you see all the regions that are covered by a cross-border program. And you have 11 of them, and their funding is 836 million euros during this altogether. And on the right-hand side, you have the transnational program also covering, which is the same area as, of course, the area of the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region, and which has 272 million available. So altogether, it's 1.1 billion available Interreg funding in the Baltic Sea region during this period. Let me underline that this is the highest amount that was ever spent, is available to be spent in the Baltic Sea region for cooperation. What is quite remarkable, I would say, is also if you look at the left-hand map, you will see that, I mean, in one way or another, almost the entire territory of the Baltic Sea region is a border region. You have, of course, the land borders, long and many borders, but then you have the sea border, of course, that the Baltic Sea that divides you and unites you both, and which makes almost the entire territory eligible for funding under the Interreg programs, which is, I think, a good opportunity for you to engage in concrete projects. If you look at the topics, you will see that there is a certain concentration on a number of priority areas: research, innovation, environment, innovation, entrepreneurship, sustainable transport, mobility, social inclusion. So I think when I saw in UBC, what are the commissions you're dealing with? I think there's quite an overlap also in terms of topics and something to dig into opportunities that you have to use the existing Interreg tools. The transnational program is linked. It's not completely overlapping with the strategy priorities yet, and but it is it's closely linked in terms of objectives and priorities. Now, if I come to the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region, it is, as President Lambert said just a few moments ago, it is very much the result of a bottom-up process in the sense that it is building on the existing cooperation structures. Without these cooperation structures, we would not have such an intense, say, transnational cooperation under the strategy. It's a new concept, was launched in 2009. There's no, let's say, extra funding coming with it, no extra legislation, there are no additional institutions that have been created. It's completely voluntary. The initiative from it came from within the region, which approached the EU and the Commission to facilitate this process, and we were very pleased and happy to take this role. We have three main objectives: save the sea, connect the region, and increase prosperity. So it's quite a broad range of areas covered, altogether 17 areas, ranging from, of course, the environmental topics, dealing with, let's say, transboundary environmental matters, a number of policy areas dealing with this, to connectivity issues, transport and energy, to connect, but also culture, for example, and then also the prosperity policy areas, innovation, and others as well. So we have a regularly updated action plan which contains the actions to implement the strategy, and there's also a list of flagships of areas of projects of particular importance, which is regularly being updated, and where you can see what is ongoing, what types of projects, processes, networks are working under the strategy. We're very pleased to have the UBC on board as well. I think there is, it's important to reach out to local, also to regional stakeholders, not only to improve the implementation of the strategy, but also to improve the ownership of it. And I think we're very happy the UBC is perfectly suited for this role. It has each of the thematic areas is coordinated by usually 1 to 3 coordinators, and the UBC is co-responsible for the one on capacity, which has also the task of reaching out to local regional stakeholders and trying to get them involved. And I think with your commissions, and we have some very good examples also of especially Sustainable Cities Commission, Youthful Cities Commission, which come to my mind, where there is already a contact, but perhaps it could also be considered to extend and to scale up these linkages between the local level and the strategy via the UBC. Just for the sake of completeness, Baltic Sea region is a front runner, was the first strategy. It's a role model, let's say, for other regions in Europe, and we now have other micro-regional strategies which follow this model in the Danube region, in the Adriatic-Ionian, and in the Alpine region. Now, if we look at the current involvement of local actors in the strategy, I would say there are several layers. We have, on the one hand, the coordinating function. Each thematic area has a steering group in which each member state is represented, also the pan-Baltic organizations. And here we have some local authorities, cities which have taken a very responsible role of coordinating, among which, for example, the city of Turku, which is in charge of bringing neighboring countries, Norway, Russia, Belarus in particular, to the strategy. We have the city of Hamburg, which is coordinating the policy area education together with Sweden, and the Union of Baltic Cities together with the NGO, Baltic NGO Network, and Swedish Institute. And perhaps just to mention also, I think it was already mentioned in one or other workshop this morning, one of the possibilities also to engage for local authorities is via the Baltic Leadership Programs, which is initiated through the horizontal action capacity. I think there's Baltic 2030, Krista mentioned it just a moment ago, on sustainable development. And but there have also been other Baltic leadership programs which were very well suited and in fact targeted even the local authorities. The Baltic Executive Program, which was targeting, say, local politicians and regional politicians and senior, let's say, administrative level to open, let's say, to support them in their engagement on transnational cooperation. There also, strategy also offers networking and matchmaking events, just to mention the EUSBSR annual forum, which takes place every year, which also last year, for the first time, Horizontal Action Capacity organized a participation day, which gives you the opportunity also to test ideas, to find partners, to present what you're doing, discuss it with maybe experienced project implementers. I can just welcome you to make use of this opportunity also in the next annual forum, which will take place in Tallinn in June next year. Just a few pointers, let's say, where you can find funding sources and partners also for implementing actions under the strategy. We have an overview of all partners included in flagship projects on the strategy website. There is the KEEP database, which includes around 20,000 Interact projects since 2000, all projects basically since 2000, where you can also have a search function. You can see which actors have been, involved in projects on culture, on transport, on social issues. You can do a targeted search. We also have a funding portal, say, where you can see which funding sources are available, not only EU, but also national, regional, even private few foundations and so on, funding sources. You can also search. It's a bit of a first entry point, which can guide you, let's say, to the funding sources available. And for the social fund, there's also a partner search base, which might be relevant for you. Just to give you a few examples, I will not go into detail of these projects, but when I looked through the list of ongoing flagships, immediately a couple of them came to my attention, in which we have a strong participation of cities. Overall, I would say it's around 40% of the projects which have participation of local or of regional actors. So it's already, I would say, not bad, but there's certainly potential for more. But these are just a few ones which I noted down. I think some of them were mentioned, and some of them the UBC is very strongly involved. UBC, Sustainable Cities Commission, for example, in the IMVAMA project. In the policy area education, there's also a dialogue, I think also with the Youthful Cities Commission. iWater is also a project under Horizontal Action Climate of the strategy, in which there's a very strong involvement of cities. So we have some good examples. Just to visualize how this could look like in practice, if we look at the policy area education, I think an area which might be relevant also for cities and local authorities, you will see that we have a very strong multi-level governance. And I think this is one of the let's say, strong points perhaps of the strategy, that it's able to bring together partners across countries, across sectors, but also across different levels of governance. I think this is, the Commission was asked to write a report now for the Member States. Every 2 years we're doing this on the state of implementation. And this is one of the points which we identified as a strong point, that it has the potential for this, for including all levels of governance. And here you see the example, one of the flagships of the almost 100 flagships that we have in this strategy, which is in fact a cluster of projects funded by Interreg, by the transnational program, also by cross-border programs, and also from the Leonardo program, from EU funds, education and culture. So, and here you see you have local actors, state actors, regional actors, NGOs, academia, which are all working hand in hand to improve. Let's say in this case, it's about vocational education and training, bringing the internationalization and entrepreneurship into this vocational training. So, just one example. The third pillar I would just like to say a few words on is the question of border regions. I mean, many of the local authorities, cities are in one way or another located in border regions. And border regions are important, they matter, they cover 30% of the EU population, 40% of the territory, and they're often disadvantaged. They're economically disadvantaged, often far away from the capitals, metropolitan areas, and they also have disadvantage in terms of access to universities, to hospitals, and this is where the legal and administrative systems of member states clash, and the citizens and the businesses that are living and acting in these border regions, they suffer, and it has an effect on the everyday life, but also it comes with an economic cost. So to identify the border obstacles and to try to mitigate and perhaps to overcome, if possible, these obstacles, the Commission started a very comprehensive cross-border review process with a stakeholder consultation, a number of workshops, also studies which we contracted to first identify and then to try to take some action. So we did in fact recognize that there are a large number of difficulties which hamper, let's say, the interaction between land border regions. This was limited in the first step now to land border regions, and these are often related to social security issues, to health issues, to transport issues, so education, labor market. So these are the type of areas. It's locally felt, but the solution can seldomly be found at the local level. So that was, I think, one of the conclusions, and there are many examples. If I can I will give you later the link to the Commission communication that was adopted in September on this, and you can find many examples. Businesses, for example, which are operating in border regions, they face up to 60% higher costs compared to businesses which only operate domestically, often linked to certification, to language translation requirements, and so on. But it's also can have very practical consequences. Rescue operations, where we cannot transport, let's say, people to the nearest hospital, but to the one of the, even if it's just across the border, but to the hospital in the home country from where the accident happened. You have the question of recognition of diplomas and which prevents people from working on the other side of the border. You have local transport which is not integrated. Some border regions where you have to buy an international ticket to go just across the border and go to the neighboring town a few kilometers away. Health provisions, if you're looking for a specialist and you cannot go to the hospital just 5 kilometers on the other side of the border, but instead you have to go 70 kilometers back. So it covers a quite wide range of issues, and it comes with economic costs. It's not easy to quantify. It's hard to find reliable data on this. We contracted an expert study, a university in Italy, to try to quantify the costs of the effects of administrative and legal border obstacles and in land border regions, and it comes with a quite significant cost. So it's around 3%. If we would remove all legal and administrative border obstacles, which is of course a very extreme and unrealistic scenario probably, but then we would have an effect of around 3% of GDP for the EU as a whole, and in the border regions above 8%. So it's quite a sizable amount. If we take a more realistic scenario maybe, that we would be able to remove 20% of the border obstacles, then we would still have an effect on GDP of around 2% in the border regions, which is also quite sizable. Of course, this varies. If you can see this on the map. It depends a bit also on where the GDP is created in the member states. If it is created very much in the border regions, then you have, of course, a higher potential to gain from removing border obstacles. You can see that for the Baltic Sea region, you see quite a sizable effect in the south of Sweden and in Denmark, of course, because there you have a lot of interaction. It's almost a land border, between Sweden and Denmark due to the bridge, but also between Estonia and Finland, you have quite sizable commuter traffic and interaction across borders. But still, even for the areas marked in yellow, the effect can be up to 4% on further removing border obstacles. There's also a number of actions that we propose, and the key word is multi-level governance, again, on how we could possibly try to mitigate these obstacles. There are some good examples, a few good examples, I would say, in Europe, where problems, let's say, on the border are identified and then brought up to a higher, let's say, national or regional level where they could be tackled. One is the Nordic Council of Ministers, for example, but also the Benelux Union in other parts in Europe, at the regional level, also in the Greater Copenhagen and Skåne Committee, and, for example, between Germany and France. There are a few good examples, and we would very much like to transfer this sort of good practice also to other regions in Europe. It's also important to improve the legislative process. You know that, most of the European legislation has to be implemented by the member states, and the member states have a leeway to implement it in the way they think it fits for their country, but often this means that it is then sort of implemented in a way which is not coherent and which makes it difficult, let's say, for the population in the border regions, then if it concerns social labor mobility issues and so on. And I think here the cooperation and also the macro-regional strategy could offer something. We have some good examples of a coherent implementation among all countries of European legislation in the environmental field, also in spatial planning, for example. I think this can also serve as an example. I will not go into detail of all the others. Language is an issue. It's important. We would like to try to encourage also member states and try to do also with our European programs, if this is possible, to the extent possible, to promote multilingualism, so that people who are living in the border region not only learn English, but more importantly also the language of their neighbors. Let me conclude by just pointing to a number of ongoing and recently adopted, let's say, documents which might be of interest also for you as the UBC and also as cities. This is the first one is the communication on boosting growth and cohesion, which I just mentioned, the work ongoing on border obstacles. The other document that might be of relevance is the 7th Cohesion Report. The Commission publishes every 3 years a report on economic, social, and territorial cohesion in the European Union. It's a quite comprehensive report with a lot of statistics and maps and benchmarking between the regions, and it also contains a chapter on sustainable cities, for example. So there's some, I think, interesting information in it if you want to benchmark yourself against other regions in Europe, see how the cities in the Baltic Sea region are doing compared to other regions on a number of different sectors. That this is an interesting document. It was just published 2 weeks ago. Same also similar, the ESPOD territorial review, also published recently. We have an ongoing study, the Commission on macro-regional cooperation and cohesion policy, which looks a little bit, serves in a way as an input also into the discussion of post-2020. Looks also macro-region by macro-regional, what are the needs for macro-regional cooperation? Are we still, let's say, having the right objectives? Do we need to change anything? Is there anything we're missing out? So this might also be of interest. And finally, I would like to warmly invite you all to the next annual forum. I think it would be good to have a strong presence from the local level, cities present at this forum. The next one will take place in Tallinn on the 4th and 5th of June 2018. It is hosted by Estonia together with the Baltic Development Forum and in close cooperation with the European Commission. And the overall topic will be post-2020. The timing is very good. The Commission plans to publish its proposals for the next multi-annual financial framework for the next period in May. And 2 other topics that will also will be covered is the state of the ecosystem in the Baltic Sea region, this ecological state of the Baltic Sea in particular, which is maybe the key objective of the strategy, and also digitalization. So how to advance the region as a global digital hub. And I see also from the workshop this morning that this is also a topic that is very relevant for you as a UBC. So with this, I would like to conclude. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Peter. And I think that anybody who walked into this afternoon not quite understanding the European strategy for the Baltic Sea region now understands it and knows how to interact with it. So I appreciate that. Please make yourself comfortable in our cafe. And we will now continue with a much shorter round of presentations to get the rest of our panel going. Little interventions of 5 minutes or so. And let me first welcome, to start this round of lightning presentations up, the Deputy Mayor of Liepaja in Latvia, Mr. Gunars Ansins. Where are you, Gunars? Am I saying your name at all correctly?
No.
No. You'll have to say it for the rest of the group. And Gunars and I have already discovered we have at least one song in common, but other than that, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us about it.
Yeah. Okay, decided.
Yes.
Alan. Okay, can I have a presentation? Yeah. In fact, I'm feeling today like at home. The first row is empty. But of course, I would like to tell a little bit about the city of Liepaja. And Liepaja as a city is the 3rd biggest town in Latvia. And of course, everybody we are thinking about how we are willing to develop our cities in 21st century. And just recently, before our discussion, we discussed about the song of GDP. Song about GDP. Maybe this is also something which may move forward cooperation between the cities. But Liepaja as a city, we are trying to be as close to the world and back. And in this presentation, I would like to say there is a couple of people who are sleeping. And for them, I have a special 2 mistakes in presentation. Afterwards, I will ask at least one of gentlemen or ladies who is reading that. And city of Liepaja, today are trying to bring together different nations and different cultures. And just a few examples. In the city of Liepaja, which is 72,000 inhabitants, in this year, 2017, has hosted more than artists from 60 countries. And if you are counting per month, it's 150 events in the city of Liepaja. Of course, cities are proposing a number of opportunities, like conferences, like today we are having a conference in Växjö. And with this, we are also motivating our business society to build and construct and reconstruct hotels, bars, and restaurants, which I would like to say is also very important. We are also trying to finance as much as possible sport infrastructure, and I would like to say we are having also good results. For example, those 3 sportsmen, I would like to say is now famous in the world. For example, this gentleman, Gunars, he's world champion in a motorbike. Anastasia Sevastova is playing in world championship. And this gentleman is a basketball player from Liepaja, a little bit higher than me. Porzeņģis, he's playing in NBA. It means also for the small city like Liepaja, we may generate, I would like to say, world famous stars. Of course, to play in this game, it's important also how we may manage to fly to Växjö, fly to Gdańsk or Gdynia, which is not constructed yet. And therefore, we spend a lot of time and attention how to connect world to the city of Liepaja and back. And today, from Liepaja, we're having regular flights to Riga with more than 60 destinations. Of course, it's also important to think about the Baltic Sea region, and we have the privilege to have also a ferry line to Germany, and more than 80 countries visited Liepaja every year, which I would like to say also some successful stories. Of course, everybody is willing to eat and drink. Therefore, we are also trying to have this brilliant restaurant and cafe infrastructure. And for 72,000 inhabitants, we are having 40 restaurants, bars, and cafe. Therefore, I would like to say, welcome to open a small city in a big-scale world. Thank you indeed.
Thank you.
Just one question. Did you follow me, my friend from Norway? Did you follow me in presentation? Did you find a mistake, at least one? Yeah. Okay, I will show you. Okay, thank you.
You can stay on stage.
Yeah.
Please join your colleague, Peter, over there. Good. Moving as briskly as we can, and you're getting a sense that this afternoon session is really rounding off many topics. We're going to hear now from Mr. Alessandro Cenderello, who's the managing partner for EU institutions from Ernst & Young, with 20 years of experience doing that kind of work, working with transportation, infrastructure, environment, SMEs, entrepreneurship, and digital innovation. He also knows a lot about the funding world and managing that. And Mr. Cenderello, can I invite you to the stage? Ah, you were out of my sight over there. Please, the floor is yours for about 5 minutes.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor being here with you to celebrate this 25th anniversary. I thought about focusing my 5 minutes on one single topic. It is the theme of resilience. And this is because we have heard from many speeches and in different sessions today a sort of leitmotif and recurring theme that is connected with the fact that cities around the world are faced with a set of challenges that are global challenges in nature, but also require local solutions. And so things like aging of population, migration, unemployment, security, and climate change. So these challenges can only be tackled acting both at global and local level. And in fact, we think that they are truly Glocal challenges. At EY, in the last year, we are focusing a lot of our attention on working with cities around the theme of resilience. And in fact, we talk about smart and resilient cities more and more. And this is really about building resilient infrastructures, but also resilient communities and creating a resilient leadership. We have also the pleasure to be a partner of the so-called 100 Resilient City initiative. That is an initiative that is supported and funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, and whose purpose, whose objective is really to help cities to create competencies and raise awareness around the importance of resilience in how you plan and build a city, and doing things like, for instance, helping creating a function that is called Chief Resilient Office, develop city resilience strategies, but also the objective of this initiative is to act as a platform and to gather more and more interest from cities all around the world around this topic. As EY, we focus our support on four, let's say, sub-themes that are smart transport, asset informatization and digital, job creation and growth, and emergency management. Just a quick view on who are the cities. They are divided into three waves. So there are, in Europe, some cities that are wave 1, depending on the level of importance and effort that they are putting, and the stage they are in building and executing their resilience strategy. One interesting outcome from the research we are doing within this framework, focusing especially on infrastructure projects, is that there are some gaps still to be filled. First one is the perception gap about the role and importance of resilient thinking between public and private, that think and act very differently when it is about planning and building infrastructure. Also, it's interesting to mention that throughout the life cycle of an infrastructure project, it's a challenge for public and private to collaborate and to find common grounds to implement resilience strategies at project level. And also the lack of incentives to have a forward-looking and building really resilience into the process. One thing that is a recent development of this initiative is a focus on the EU policy, and I think this is relevant for all of you here, because 2 weeks ago, during the days of weaker regions in Brussels, we had the opportunity to present to the European Commission some ideas, some possible actions to take the lead at European level on the urban resilience agenda. And listed here, you can see some of them. First of all is really develop and coordinate better the funding streams. We have heard about the cohesion policy, but also there are other research and innovation, Horizon 2020 funds and structural funds that can be better coordinated and streamlined to support the urban resilience agenda. Another idea that could be very interesting is to create a new wide resilient challenge for cities, but also to dedicate one pillar of the European Commission Cities Forum to urban resilience, for instance. And the last interesting one is to form a partnership to exchange data and best practices on how cities can prepare themselves and be ready and become more resilient. So being here, I was inspired really by the story of Växjö, but also Christensen on sustainability and integration of migrants. That is all about how you build resilient communities. So I think that the Union of the Baltic Cities is really in a very strong position to take the lead in this agenda. And that is also a way to show solidarity, that is also solidarity across different generations. So I invite you to think and reflect also about this idea that I shared with you today. Thank you.
And thank you, Alessandro. Goodness, what a potpourri. I'm already beginning to think, just to alert our panelists, that it's very possible that rather than me asking you questions, I'm just going to let the audience do that, so just be prepared. Our next speaker is coming to us from Kiel in Germany. No, sorry, wrong. I turned my page too quickly. Our next speaker is coming from Finland, and she has a very interesting background. If you've ever gotten into an elevator somewhere in the world and said, this is a very well-designed elevator, it's at least possible that it's thanks to her work. Stenros was the director of design for Kone Elevator Company, and now she's the director of design for the city of Helsinki. And I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about the role of design in making our cities prosperous.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here, participating to the UBS General Conference first time in my life, after the Kone life, and also visit the beautiful Växjö city first time in my life. So, welcome to my world. I'm probably the first ever chief design officer in the whole world. And everybody started to ask a year around where I started in my new job that, so, well, what are you going to do? Well, I still struggle with that. What is my purpose and passion in terms of the city? But if I open it up, you can see there that behind my name is CDO. One can also read it as Chief Disruption Officer. And I think that's probably what I do. Somebody mentioned here today that it's all about change leadership. Whatever you do, you have to cope with change. And I think that creative leadership is exactly doing something like this. So I will show you only one slide, and that's from my future notebook. It's about the recent articles or signals that I have read what could be related to the idea of city leadership for the future. So I will start. First, there is going to be tougher and tougher city competition, and that's all about urban innovation. It's not only about higher and faster, like in my previous life, but it could be also more sustainable, most well-being, most happy. You can put any name after best something. So cities all around the world, they will definitely compete with each other for many reasons. Second thing is actually, I think, very, very important. If you noticed, some of you may have noticed that last week, New York City, they launched the first ever municipal service design studio called Civic Service Design Studio that is actually trying to solve the very severe problems of those people with low income. So they open up a new service design studio that is dedicated, let's say, to civic compassion, one might say, and social innovation. And why I say that it's important, it's a message that is not only a project, it's not just a lab or something that will come and go, no, but it's a permanent unit within the city structure that will help to provide better services for low-income residents. And I think that this will show a lot of way, in my thinking, to what I would like to see in the future in Helsinki, so that we dedicate a section within city organization to improve the possibilities of vulnerable people. The next one is actually city as a platform. We have already heard about this today. And the recent article that was also launched only a few days ago was that Google or Google Sidewalk Labs, they will open a totally new city section, Sidewalk Toronto in Canada, within certain time of years to come. And that will be a platform open for anybody all around the world to create apps that will show the way towards the future in terms of sustainability, mobility, affordability, for example. They did a study among the 150 kind of future cities throughout the history, and the most appealing one, they said, for this proposal was actually an Epcot plan in Florida that Walt Disney created in 1960s, and they sort of made it alive. And I think that is also one signal showing that this kind of labs, in terms of smart city labs and hubs and innovation hubs, in terms of high tech, that they will change into the bigger scale so that we can really test those possibilities. And of course, in the heart is the citizen experience, and that was the starting point when we created the new city strategy for Helsinki last spring. And it's about innovation communities and how people identify themselves, not to cities, but neighborhoods. And final thing, responsive city. There was an article also in last week's stating that smart city is so boring. Give us responsive city. And responsive city is different than smart city. Smart city is more like a test bed for predictable behavior, but responsive city is actually giving the essential, the center role for people and their activities. So I think that we are stepping out of smart cities, and we welcome this idea of responsive city. And finally, I will end up with reminding you that civic city is there to come, and how we cope with that, it's up to us. But definitely it's already knocking the door. So thank you.
Thank you. That was so interesting that I didn't even want to stand up and give you any kind of time signal. I could have listened to a lot more of that. But we do have two more speakers, in fact. We have one more speaker, and then we have one more panelist to join us. And I hope you're getting ready, people in the audience, with one or two important questions that you can round off our session with. And before that, though, let me welcome to the stage Mr. Wolfgang Röttgers, who is the Deputy Mayor of Kiel, responsible for finance, personnel, order, fire department, and culture. What an interesting portfolio to have all under one roof. Yes. The floor is yours for 5 minutes, sir.
I'm very glad that I can present you a cultural, sustainable idea from Kiel, and I hope you will take part when you've heard it. Months ago, some people in Kiel sat together and had the idea of bringing cities and people in the Baltic Sea region together for the exchange of culture every 2 years. We may call it the Baltic Biennale of Culture. The cities in the Baltic Sea region share a long and cultural history. Through the Baltic Sea, they are linked by traditions and historical ties, and at the same time, they have a wonderful and deeply valued cultural diversity. Many international initiatives have emerged in this cultural area, not at least as a response to and expression of the division during the Cold War, following World War II, and the National Socialism in Germany. President Per Röttger Andersen said in his invitation to Växjö, in our region and member cities, we have a tremendous wealth of experience and great examples of how we can listen to and engage our citizens. We know how to develop solutions to everyday problems and challenges of tomorrow. There is so much we can learn from each other, and we should do this. We, as cities and regions, have a wider responsibility to engage in shaping and building the Europe of tomorrow, a Europe based on trust and democratic values, where the voices of the ordinary citizens are heard and taken into account. The President is absolutely right. And we would like to do this in 2020 and subsequently every 2 years. Our city government decided that we should contact the cities of the UBC family, the regions and the Euro cities to find out if they are interested in coming together with about 6 or more cities every 2 years. With this initiative, the international perception and cohesion of the cities and regions in the Baltic Sea region can only be strengthened. The participation is conditioned on the willingness to arrange a program with the other participating cities and regions. Every city and region is also to provide a cultural program that would cover a minimum period of 3 months as part of the overall program of the Baltic Biennale. Just recently, the city of Kiel has taken up a sister city partnership with San Francisco. Almost 50 citizens from the States came to the official start, and we also had many local citizens attending who all had a lot of fun and showed a great interest in this new partnership. There are a lot of things to learn from our friends in the non-Trump San Francisco, but citizens' participation is at least the best lesson. The Biennale should not only have the functionaries, officials, and politicians in the center of attention, it must also be the ordinary people in order to strengthen the contacts between the cities across the borders. This is what we in Kiel consider as future-orientated cooperation of cities and citizens. A very special aim must be to get young people interested because they are the future, we know this. A wonderful example for a future or cooperation is our sea film festival, Cinemare, which started 2 years ago. What is closer than to run such a festival in the participating cities, which are all situated by sea? Each city could show films from their own country or region during this event, either at the same time of the festival in Kiel or at a different time. I think that's a very good idea. The others who should be involved are obvious: museums, musical schools, jazz, rock, classical museum, theater, ballet, opera, chorus, dance, folk dance, handicraft, graphic and media art, as well as poetry slam. One element which could also be given a special thought is singing together. This form of jointly singing pop songs and other songs with musical support, thereby creating a very intense sense of togetherness, is presently becoming very popular in many cities all over Germany, and could, because of the most English lyrics, overcome all language barriers in the Baltic Sea areas. Another example for a fantastic event that would be tremendously suitable for the Biennale may be the project Trans-Baltic Light, which could be presented in the cities of Biennale. It is about Hajj light, picture and film projections, which are creating great enthusiasm all over. The last I would like to mention is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. A small private theater in Kiel plays it outdoors every summer. It could be performed by actresses and actors from different countries and is a theater play which everyone in Europe will understand. This is a point the youth could perfectly join in. Through the program Creative Europe, it is intended to submit a grant application to the European Union for the Biennale. All these cooperational projects are to support the transnational distribution of cultural and creative works, they say. That's what we want too. Furthermore, it's also about a contribution to the audience development, which should offer new and innovative ways for the interaction with the audience and enhancing the accessibility to cultural and creative works. Yes, this is exactly what we want to achieve too. We need international cooperation strong cultural connections and communities now, more than ever. And we need leadership in Europe to focus on these different themes. The next steps to the Biennale from now on will be, I would like you all to think about the idea of being part of the Baltic Biennale of Culture 2020. If you are interested, please give us an indication and confirm till the end of November, and it's no problem when it will be a little later. Our aim, is already mentioned, is to find 5 to 10 participating cities or regions. In the case of a larger number of registrations, then I think that there should be a vote within the Culture Commission of the UBC, headed by our dear colleague, Jana Simula. In February or March next year, we intend to invite the participating cities to a workshop in Kiel, during which the program, topics, and schedule should be discussed. This will allow the individual cities to bring forward their own creative ideas and have them included. During Kiel Week 2018 in June, we will take the subject up again and push it further. After that, further steps to proceed with the planning will follow in 2018 and 2019. The Biennale itself is planned to take place from April to September 2020 for a minimum period of 3 months. In Northern Europe, you know this, especially these months are suitable for a Biennale with numerous outdoor events. It is my wish, and I do hope, that many cities and people will be inspired by this idea. The Baltic Biennale of Culture is a simple but powerful and impressive chance to improve the cooperation in the Baltic Sea region. Over the years, it should develop a tradition which in 10 years' time will lead us to say, we do not want to be without the Baltic Biennale of Culture anymore. Let's do it. I already very much look forward to the opening in 2020. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Wolfgang. And I think you've managed to touch every other topic that's already been hit. I think it's all happening in Kiel now. You've convinced me of this. You talked about civic participation, we had just heard about, and you also connected to the youth issue, which we're going to hear a little bit about now. I'd like to invite up to the stage Mr. Mantas Jurgutis, who's appearing in place of his vice mayor, so he hasn't prepared a presentation. But I would like to at least find out who you are and what you do. Stand with me for a minute. Since you're, as we call it in baseball, a pinch hitter, jumping in at the last second. But as I understand it, in addition to your job now, working as the chairman of management and communities in Kaunas, but you also had a background, and I guess that's probably why you got the job, as not just a proponent of youth engagement and entrepreneurship, but you actually were you won prizes for the work that you were doing in that field. So what can you tell us is an important secret for something that everybody here, I think, was interested to know, which is how do you get youth really empowered, really engaged in these issues?
Okay, Alan, so thank you. Sorry, our deputy mayor couldn't come, but at least it's a sign for me that I should strive for more if I can change deputy mayor. And I think coming to this youth participation topic, we touch it every year. It's okay in EU, it's okay in the cities, but practically speaking, I think that young people, and I think Vakshia, the team, did a great job showing how youth can be practically involved, not just on the paper. I hope they liked the conference, but I think that youth, and also European Youth Forum, the umbrella of all Europe youth NGOs, says that youth participation should be taken more in account. On the other hand, if we speak about cities and region development, I don't imagine any kind of leadership-based development except without community development. I think what Anna touched a little bit is about innovation in community, and that smart city is becoming boring or just technological. So, and what Peter said, So if we would manage to combine this creativity and these billions, then youth wouldn't need to participate because all would be done.
I don't know why you haven't gone into politics yet, but there probably is a good career for you ahead.
Alan, if you say so.
Montas, thanks so much. Please, please join. Now, those of you who are sticking with us this afternoon, I'm going to open the floor. I'm going to ask for 2, maximum 3 questions. I just want to hear what's on your mind as a result of listening to our presenters today. And then the presenters will listen to the questions, and we'll see whether one of them wants to take the bait of one of the questions that you hear and jump on it. So we have a couple of roving microphones available, and people to rove with them. You need one of these, I'm guessing? Somebody? Is there someone? Oh, we do have a question down here in the front left. Is there somebody? It's like being an auctioneer suddenly. I see one. I see no. So let's go with the closest one with the mic. You'll be number 2, even though you were the first to raise your hand.
Okay.
Please, and say who you are and where you're from.
Yes, my name is Sara Estlander. I'm from HELCOM, the Baltic Marine Environment Protection Commission. And I have a question aimed actually at Anne Stenros, and connecting a bit to the theme of the next panel. With my background in user experience design and now working with the marine environment, I'm curious how you see the connection between design in a city context and the environment.
Hang on to that question, Anne. I want to actually hear the second question first. Although we don't have a runner over here. So, no, go ahead and answer.
Thank you.
Oh, you do have your microphone. I was fooled again, crowd.
Okay.
Yes.
No. Yes, it is. So, thank you. I'm Tono Karo from Tallinn, from Estonia. I have been with the EUSBSR almost from the beginning. My question goes to the twin city of Tallinn, Kiel, for the reasons that we can wonder. The former Lord Mayor of Kiel, Karl-Heinz Luckhard, made a wonder. You know him because he's a legend in town, went against the wind and the central government in Bonn. It was all the partnerships arranged via Moscow, and he went against Bonn decisions, and he made Tallinn as a twin. The ties with your city have been instrumental to build up a state and the country and the city having the presidency over the European Union. Now, can you evaluate now?
What's the question?
The question is now, how can you evaluate, looking back, has it been profitable, and what can we do together more for you, Kiel, to say thank you?
Have you understood the question?
No, not really.
Not really. So it may not be that you have to answer that question then. You may need to talk with him privately after the event, because I'm not sure he understood. But Anne, this allowed you to have a time to reflect on your answer. So please.
Thank you. I suppose the question was something related to the user-centric approach, user experience, and how that works in the city scale, and if it's different.
It was about the connection between design in a city context and the environment.
Wow, okay. Well, this is a long discussion. Maybe we can share that after this, this section. But basically what I have been involved now is more like strategic design than design per se. I mean that it doesn't have anything to do with this the city building or city planning or anything like that, but it's in a strategic level. So I have very much done scenario work, personas, workshops with top leaders in the city, etc. So that I have tried to open up the eyes towards future. So that has been my job, basically, during the past year. But it's because we have been planning this new strategy. So if I have started in a different time, so probably it has been more concrete.
Of course, design thinking has been slowly colonizing a lot of strategic thinking, and I think that's what's happened in your case. But she probably wants to hear a word or two about whether you do anything to do with the environment. Anything to do with the environment, whether your planning has got an environmental dimension.
Well, it has been all the way in our discussions, of course, but more I think that the citizen involvement, basically. We focused on, when we created 4 scenarios for Helsinki by 2030, we focused on the idea how much people are willing to participate, and there are several different ways to participate. You participate privately as a person or in a collaborative mode, etc. So we touched that a lot because we saw that it's such a strong emerging trend, and we focused the idea of civic city.
Thank you very much. And gentlemen, you'll excuse me if I decide that one question answered by the one woman on the panel now outweighs 5 gentlemen who've already spoken. Probably we can call it even, so to speak. Let's thank our panel for their service today. I also have for each of you one of these envelopes. So please grab this envelope for me before you go. This is also your own personal. You've earned a UNICEF disaster relief package so on behalf of the children who will be served because of your labor. Thank you very much. Good. And for those of you who are watching the clock, you'll notice that we're 15 minutes behind. And that means that our last panel will be very brisk. We'll go a little bit over our closing time, but not much. You know, the job of being a moderator is often, this has caused me to think that, that part of your job is to practice democracy and make sure that everybody has an equal amount of time to speak and be represented. It's not always easy. But we'll move quickly now because our last topic is a nice bridge from the last question that we had, because the entire panel is dedicated to the topic of environment and resource use. A lot of it will be focused around, even whether these speakers use the phrase or not, it gets used a lot. It's circular economy these days. It's been called many other things over time. But to get us talking about it, let's just bring our speakers up for their quick statements and getting our minds working. And the first one is Carina Svensson. There's Carina, wonderful. She is the chair of the environmental board of Malmö, Sweden. And Malmö is also highly profiled on environment and sustainability issues, not only, of course, in Sweden, but around the world. So for 5 minutes, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for still being here. I will tell you a bit about Malmö. Malmö is the 3rd largest city in Sweden, with a little bit more than 330,000 inhabitants. We are expecting to be almost 500,000 at 2030. In Malmö, we have 178 nationalities, and we speak just about 140 different languages. So you see, counting this and on this way, we are a very rich city. And we truly understand what the global city means. Malmö is also a young city with a big challenge ahead of us that we know and we are working with. We have faced challenges previously and managed it. From 1870 to 1980-1990, Malmö was a big industry city with both teak industries and a very, very large shipyard named Kockums, with the world's biggest crane and a very huge symbol for Malmö. But the economic crisis caused us a loss of more than 35,000 jobs, which now, and we also lost our crane, which now stands in Korea, painted red, and named Crane of Tears. The politicians that time were courageous and determined themselves through a great visionary effort to invest in the old area and create a new residential area. This was a result in the starting point of the Western Harbour, as you know and we know it today, an environmentally orientated area with nearly 7,000 people living there. And when it was a shipyard, there was about 4,500 people working there. Now there are over 6,000 people working. And through many of these examples, Malmö and the region of Öresund has become, I'm so proud to say, a leading example of how the social and economic needs of an expansive area can be combined with environmental protection. It does not have to be a contradiction between the different perspectives. Today, we face a new challenge. With the population growth, we try to use less energy, reduce resources, reduce car dependencies, so we can achieve a clean and strong environment city. Talking about cities as leaders for global sustainable development, as one of the many steps, the city of Malmö has adopted the UN Agenda 2030 and the 17 SDG goals, and we are working hard to implement them in all works for all the city. We are totally convinced that it is important to have an integrated approach to social environment and economic challenge. Good governance is dependent on a strong relationship with the environment, and we are convinced that the local initiatives are created to the fulfillment of the UN goals. So, I'm so proud to say that Malmö was the first municipality in Sweden that made the SDG goals its own. And I'm also convinced that the cities, the regions, the countries, and so on, have to be strong, and good politicals have to be brave, to believe in and trust in some way a bit crazy civil servants, because they are trying to do and are listening to us, to do the big thing. So global success, it starts with local actions, and that is how we in Malmö are still building a very strong city. Thank you.
Oh, there it is. Hello. Sorry. Thank you for giving us a story of transformation in Malmö. Moving briskly right along, I'd like to invite our second speaker for this last panel, and that is, excuse me, because Per Hulberg, you're joining our panel, but you hadn't prepared a presentation for this section, correct? But Jyrki Myllyvirta, the mayor of Finland, of Lahti, Finland. He said I was pronouncing his name reasonably accurately, and he's been the mayor of Lahti for the last few years. And before that, you were the mayor of another city up the road, I read. You were the mayor of Mikkeli. So you were the mayor of one town, and then you moved up to a bigger town and became mayor of that. I'm sure there's an interesting story there, but don't bother to tell it. Tell us what was on your mind. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all of you, the bravest and best of all who still are present. So I tell greetings from the city of Lahti, Finland. We've been part of the UBC family almost from the beginning, especially in the field of sustainable development, but also in other fields. Lahti is a city of 120,000 inhabitants, 100 kilometers from the national capital, Helsinki. It's a city of winter sports, clean tech, industrial design, nature, culture. The city has a very strong industrial background, meaning that we've gone through continuous restructuring, and we've been creating new kinds of jobs. Like Växjö and many others, our environmental story started with cleaning up the lake. We went on to climate actions, advanced city planning, public transportation, cycling, rental housing, other construction, education, research, business promotion. The vision of Lahti is to thrive internationally as a bold environmental city. This year we were the finalists, one of the finalists for the European Green Capital 2019. Oslo won the title. We were good second. We say we lost to oil money, but anyway, we'll try again. A couple of weeks ago, we received almost 5 million euros from the European Commission under the Urban Innovative Actions program for promoting modern mobility solutions in the city. We've been very successful in engaging the citizen for the environmental cause and sustainability. Also in the reuse of resources very concretely. In fact, we are on our way to circular economy among the first. At present, above 95% of the municipal waste is utilized. We will go forward with that, up to 100, maybe not any further. But more important is how much of the municipal waste can be used in a smarter way than burning it. Now it's above 30%. The aim is to get up to 60. In fact, we can burn large part of our waste so that it's economically profitable, because we have our advanced sorting system and we have a very modern power plant based on gasification of the fuel, and it means that it's profitable to burn it. But anyway, the idea is that now we must create new activity, new business on the basis of reuse of the materials instead of burning them. As I said, the start is the household sorting system of waste. It's something that has been developed for 30 years. It's a big educational project to get the people to commit themselves to sorting. There was a time when children from the kindergarten and school, when they came home, they taught their parents what to do. And now we are up to that. We have very well assorted waste to start with when we go ahead with our waste management. The municipal waste, to a large extent, is in the hands of the city and city-owned companies. Waste management, energy and water companies, composting. We have the largest biogas reactor in Finland. But circular economy to be taken seriously requires much more. We need more private companies to use and refine the materials. We have a number of them in Lahti now, but there is room for more. But we can say that there is already an ecosystem of circular economy companies in Lahti. They exploit our location close to the capital area in Finland, in the middle of southern Finland. For suitable recyclable material fractions, the valuable ones, the market is national or international, not only regional. We are developing the ideas of circular economy together with the city of Helsinki on our joint Smart and Clean Foundation, developing smart urban solutions to the world market. The circular economy is a wide concept, from recycling and reuse of materials to to smart solutions and sharing economy. We work together with the universities in Lahti and the Science Park to create new solutions and possibilities for circular economy practices and businesses. The City of Lahti promotes enthusiastically the circular economy futures, and we are very eager to learn from other cities about their experiences. Thank you.
I have to say, one of the byproducts for me of coming to this conference is suddenly there are quite a number of new cities on my list of places where I feel like I need to visit, and Lahti is definitely one of them. Good. We have a final speaker. It's going to be you, Shireen, just so you know. And then I'm going to once again both reward you for having those of you who have stuck with us to the end, and also toss the responsibility over to you for our closing questions to these panelists. I'll give you some clues before we do that, but I want you to be prepared with some interesting questions. I have some if you don't, but just be ready. Now, our final speaker is coming. Maybe you are coming from the farthest away. London is farther than Belgium. It's true. And this is, of course, our pleasure that Shireen Röttgers, or Röttgers? Röttgers. That's what it should be. Who's the city's manager for a very important organization that, if you don't know what it is, she'll tell you. CDP. And I would call it an essential institution in the management of our cities and companies today. And Shireen, you've got an amazing sort of portfolio of thousands of companies and about your organization and that you're working with, cities and investors. But why don't I leave it to you to tell your story?
Thank you very much, Alan, and thank you very much for all of you still sticking around. I do realize that I'm kind of in between you and an amazing dinner tonight, so I will make it short. I also do have a short video, kind of as an exchange for, listening to all of us speaking all day. But before I put that on, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. So Shireen, I work for CDP. CDP is a global reporting platform. So it's a tool for cities and for companies and states and regions to be more transparent about what they're doing on environmental action. So that includes climate change, but also water and forest. As Alan was kindly saying, more than 6,000 companies across the world, more than 570 cities, and since 2016, formally the Union of Baltic Cities as one of our key partners, which we're really glad. We have more than 20 cities reporting to us this year, and we've released a report today, which you should definitely have a look at, which is at the UBC website. I wanted to speak a bit about leadership, kind of picking up on the first panel we have heard today about agency and leadership, and looking at all the data that we collect and speaking to all the cities we're working with. It is really fascinating to see how climate leadership from cities has changed over time. How it used to be having an ambitious goal and slowly achieving it, to bringing everyone else on board. Cities are amazing conveners. They bring together business, investors, civil society, and citizens. And they have an amazing role to play in taking forward actions on climate change. And all around the world, in particular here in the Baltic Sea region, we see cities taking a step. We see cities working with citizens, but in particular with their stakeholders, different departments within the city, but also business, taking steps and working with them on setting goals, reducing emissions, promoting the use of renewable energy, taking adaptation measures. And it's really important that we work with all of these stakeholders, because only then, as all of you probably know better than me, you'll be able to achieve your own goals. But I'll leave it with that, and hopefully you have a couple of questions. And I'll show a very quick video, if I can.
Continually experimenting with new ideas and techniques, reconstructing, developing, modernizing.
the invitation to have a look at our website where you can find all the data freely and publicly available and find out what's happening and how you can learn from other cities taking these great commitments and steps to implement them.
Thank you, Shireen. And if you're, I don't know how many of you follow the Sustainable Development Goals closely, and I hope you all know that there is a goal 11, which is about building sustainable cities. And you may wonder, how did we get to goal 11? Why is there a goal 11 on cities? And it's very simple, because cities, like the ones that you represent, banded together and said, we are so important, the urbanization of this world is so important that there must be a special goal on cities. It was a campaign, and they were successful. And I think that your video, reflects that, Shireen, and your mission, the mission of your organization. Now, I promise to open the floor to questions on issues related to circular economy, use of resources, the environment, accelerating those processes. I had also prepared some questions in advance. By the way, Per Holdberg, you're intended to join our panel now, representing the city of Växjö. We'll see what happens with the questions that get opened. Other questions I had prepared had to do with some of my own personal interest, I'll be honest with you, like how can cities, who are so important to the issue of microplastics and plastics in the ocean, do more? How can we work together as cities to address the fact that cities also contribute to the ecological footprints of our nations? And our nations in the Baltic Sea region have heavy footprints. Now, that was some of the things that were on my mind, but now let's find out what's on your mind. Who's got a question for our panel? Can somebody run to this gentleman with a microphone?
Hello, my name is Sebastian Magyar, representing Euroregion Baltic.
Hello, Sebastian.
Hey, hello, Alan. Good to see you. Thank you for all the presentations. My question is connected to the earlier session that we had on Sustainable Development Goals, and we discussed how the local and regional and international level can work on that. So my question will be about the role of UBC, a potential contributor and facilitator for the cities in the network to work with the SDGs in a strategic way somehow. I think that we are perfectly suited as a network, as an organization to do that. But the question will remain how to do it.
And Per, you're perfectly suited to answer that question because of your role. Well,
I'm not sure about that, but it's a good question. If we talk about the Agenda 2030, I announced it before, and I think there's something here. Malmö has a very ambitious program in this field, so does Växjö. We decided to adopt it, and basically the whole city budget is now sort of mirrored towards the Agenda 2030. And I would say the UBC, I think, is a great platform in order to inspire all the friends among the cities within the UBC membership to develop and help each other out, because this is not an easy task. Implementing this is not a job for one or two specialists in our office. It's a very complex how to do it and things, and nobody has the answer. So I would say the platform of the UBC would be a perfect environment to develop. Someone has a great idea on the number 1 and one on number 13, and the other one on number 17. So I think we can help each other out very much here, because it's more of a, I think it would be a great, the platform is very suitable for developing this together.
I think it's a wonderful response. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals, well, different cities around the region are stronger in different collections of them, you might say. So there'd be a lot of possibility for exchange there. Is there another question from our crowd? Unless one of you wanted to jump in on that. Ah, yes, Karina wanted to add, hang on.
I want to add something, because if it's, the 70 goals should be in the whole city, you have to link every decision you do in the board, for example, to which goal does this remains, so everyone can see it. We have done that decision in my environment board. So when we take a decision, we can see it links to 11, 14, and so on. So everyone knows it then.
Wonderful. And this is a thing that's, oh, Shireen, yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to add really quickly that I think it's really important. I think it's great that cities are already aligning with SDGs. I think it's really important. It's also important in terms of thinking about how to finance some of the solutions there are, because big international banks are now aligning their portfolio. Investors, private sector investors are slowly moving ahead. And linked to that, I think it's really important that we have data that supports that idea, to know where we are and how we can track our progress against the SDGs. So I think one of the big tasks, and it's not an easy one, is to find out what are the right indicators for each of the goals and the targets, and what can cities do in order to contribute to them, and how can we measure that. And CDP certainly is currently trying to work that out with our cities in order to have a platform where cities can track their progress.
Thank you. I'll add my own point here, which is that the global indicators on the SDGs are framed in such a way that they're much too general. Very often we're measuring the existence of plans or budget allocations rather than actual action. And I think the cities can solve that problem, because that's where the action is actually happening. You can get the data a lot more seriously. So wonderful exchange on that question. We have time for one or two more. Yes, Jana?
Thank you. I have a very practical question. Coming from a city which university consortium has the first ever professor in gaming, and the games we are doing not games for gaming, we are doing games to kind of solve problems. And I would want to know if you know any games on this subject, how to teach people to act in a sustainable way.
Well, they may have some answer. Are there games that can help us learn to do more sustainability, especially at the city level? If you're thinking of, you may know one. I can tell you that in Poland, there's a place called the Center for System Solutions, and they produce many such games that are very appropriate for city and regional level. And the most recent one is on the Sustainable Development Goals. So games do exist. Does this group have any experience working with what they call serious games, simulation events, to help learn how to deal with those trade-offs and exchanges that Per was talking about? Shireen does have.
I just know of a game, which is the city of Paris has put one together for its citizens, which is absolutely fantastic. It's a bit of an online game where you can play around with the activities you take, and then you can see how much emissions you have reduced and how you get closer to your goal. And you get points if you work with different stakeholders, and it's a bit of an interactive. Have a look, it's on the website of City of Paris, but it's a great way to engage the community around the actions that cities are taking.
Great, and Per also.
Yes, I think the question is good, because my reflection of the question and to create the games, that is good. It's a matter of storytelling. It's a matter of making an easy access instead of reading reports of several hundred pages, which no 14-year-old or 55-year-old, for that matter, does. So I think it's important to create an environment where there is an easy access for the average person, the ordinary citizen, whether it's young or old, to grip what it is. Because if we talk about the UN 17 goals, it can be quite abstract. So that leads me to, in combination with all these strategic planning and all these complex processes, it's important to show sort of low-hanging fruits, hands-on experience, and that's what cities are really good at. That is maybe what cities are the best at, doing hands-on things related to this, and then you can create storytelling around this. So I think it's very important to get the understanding from all the, voters. That's important.
Thank you. Thank you, panel, and thank you for such an interesting question. I can recommend a website, games4sustainability.com. Games for Sustainability. One more question, please. Yes. In the back corner, the lady in the light, she just beat you, sorry, by a few seconds.
Thank you. Well, I'm Pilar Meseguer, coming from the city of Turku, and I'm the project coordinator of iWater. I want to comment something that a couple of issues that we have before the coffee break. One of them was populism and nationalism, that we have to fight against it. And I would like to show a different point of view. I want your comments about it. I think that we are responsible for this kind of situations or issues, populism and nationalism, and it would be, in my opinion, much better to analyze what happened, what kind of actions we took in the past that caused them, and then to apply them to somehow get this kind of a stakeholder engagement and involvement that you were talking about, and that it seems that we are not making any kind of progress with this kind of sustainable themes that issues that we have, but well, people that wanted this kind of nationalism and the populists, they succeed. So I think it would be useful to analyze it. What do you think about it?
Well, panel, what do you think? Is there another way to deal with the issue of nationalism in our cities? Is there some stakeholder process we could use to dig deeper and understand where it's coming from and to address it more profoundly? Per.
It strikes me, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but we had an event about a month ago in the city, actually in this hall. We're one of the host cities for the free speech, so we invite an author that is suppressed somewhere in the world to stay a year in Växjö to write and, being an artist freely. In combination with that, we invited every sixth grader, one full day, to talk and speak about the speech and where sources and information comes from, and I think that helps sixth graders and further on to think a little bit more of what is going on, how do you get the information, and what do you believe in the information and things like that. So it's not fully an answer, but it's an initiative that we have, and we will keep on doing that because we believe that with all the social media and all that, these young kids need to respond to what's going on and not believe everything that's going on in the world. So that is one hands-on thing that we did to every sixth grader, talk about the social media, what's going on, and I think that's one of the things that can hold back extreme thoughts.
Karina.
I think it's very important to start with the young girls and boys. To do, we have 2 places in Malmö where we are dedicated to young people in grade 6, 9, and so, and they are coming to us. Kretseum is one of this. Marine Pedagogic Center was started last week, and the young people are seeing it from, they are in it, working with it, seeing it, touching it, feeling it, and with their knowledge, they reach out to all us and telling us what not to do anymore.
Wonderful story. Yeah, thank you. And I think a wonderful note of ending around engaging people. I remember that on Stenros earlier today, you mentioned that cities were platforms, among many other things that cities are. And that made me remember that where that word platform came, first we had internet platforms, and now cities are reclaiming that virtual space by framing themselves as platforms where information and knowledge, and of course, all the other things we've been talking about today, getting youth involvement, bringing people together on any range of topics, getting children engaged in thinking about how to navigate this difficult future. For most people, again, I end with my opening words, for most people, it all happens in cities. And so what you do and what we do in those environments is going to be absolutely decisive for whether or not we attain the vision that's encapsulated in the Sustainable Development Goals. So I want to thank our panel again for their wonderful service. They will also get a disaster relief package, which they could use for themselves, perhaps, if they find themselves in a disaster sometime. But as I'm giving them the panel, I think I'd like to invite up to the stage if there's any closing words to be offered by the president of the UBC, Per Röttger Andersen. I think you can go off the stage.
Yes, thank you all. Thank you very much for your contribution to a very interesting afternoon. I think we have covered quite a lot of topics to the very precise, you could say. These are all topics for the city councils to deal with. This is very important that we can show that we have hands-on, as it was said. We have hands-on these matters. And I do agree with our moderator that it is in the cities we have to deal with it, and we have also to show some courage, to be brave as politicians, and to show leadership. We have also to conclude this session with a resolution, and that is the sustainable resolution, if I can use that word. It has been published on our website, and it has been published in paper outside. So I will not once again read that, but I shall say that it has been recommended by the board, and therefore I should like us all to accept it, and we can do that by applause. Thank you for a very good day. Then I should say maybe that tonight's festivitas will be a Hützel we have to drive, and that is not it, but it is very windy outside, and it's also raining. So therefore, it's casual clothing for the autumn. So ladies, don't wear the very thin dresses tonight. And gents, put on the woolen underwear. Then we are all fit for fight in the morning again. See you. Buses will leave from the hotels at 18:30, half past 6. That's it. In the front of the concert hall. Bo, you're good. Thank you very much. See you there.